What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another episode. My name is Zach and this is StaleMates, where we bring you what is going on in the wrestling world every freaking week. Let's freaking go. We keep you in tap with what's going on. So go ahead and hit subscribe and hit that notification bell down below. That way you can stay notified whenever we drop a video. So I'll go ahead and wait. Go ahead and do that. Thank you. Before we get into today's video, let's give a shout out to our sponsors, Barbarian Apparel and Above and Beyond Wash and Seal. Barbarian Apparel, you see the gear that I'm wearing. Okay, you can also have this gear if you scroll down and hit that link. Josh and Barbarian will hook you guys up with some sweet gear before this wrestling season starts. And guess what? You can also get custom team apparel. Go ahead and hit up Josh. Say, hey, we want you guys to be our main apparel company for this upcoming season, and we want a team store with you, Barbarian. So go tell them that StaleMate sent you. You can also go to our team store and buy our merch, but buy anybody's merch, okay? It'll show up at your door, hassle free. So go ahead and do that after this video, after you watch this video to completion. Thank you. Also, Above and Beyond Wash and Seal, they hooked us up with a sweet floor for our studio because our floors were looking dusty. Okay, so hit up Trent if you want a custom floor for your shop, your gym, your you name it, podcast studio, your wrestling facility, whatever you want. Go ahead and hit up Trent at Above and Beyond Wash and Seal. Okay. Also, one more thing, Stalemate Street League 2, October 29. Tickets will be on sale this Friday. Watch TikTok star, 7.5 million followers, 300-some thousand YouTube subscribers, Jarrett Stodd, wrestle a Bellator MMA fighter, and Ian Butler. Okay, they're going to wrestle a folk style match. Stalemate Street League 2 coming up October 29th. Tickets will be on sale this Friday. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you name it, to get that link for those tickets when they do go on sale. So stay with us. Thank you for watching this video. Roll the tape. Okay, so last week, the University of Iowa decided that they were going to add a women's wrestling program. Shout out to them. This is huge for the sport of wrestling. It is huge for women's wrestling. You name it. This is awesome. Let me tell you a couple reasons why this is awesome. One, this is a big domino in the movement for women's wrestling at the Division I level. Presbyterian College and Sacred Heart University were both first to do it, but it's not always about who did it first. It's about who did it the biggest sometimes. And the University of Iowa adding women's wrestling is huge. This puts pressure on the Penn States, the Oklahoma States, the Minnesotas, the Iowa States, Missouris, you name it, to add a women's wrestling program. And the women's wrestling program is huge for a couple of reasons. One, Title IX. If you don't know about Title IX, it's essentially adding the same amount of dollars for women's sports as for men. So you can't have a big budget for the men and a little for the women. It should pretty much equal. A lot of times when you say Title IX in the wrestling world, a lot of people shudder.
Oh! Ew! Dude! What the?
They don't like it, and there's a good reason for that. When Title IX got instated, basically it was a death to a lot of college wrestling programs across the country, because the easiest way to even out the dollars for men and for women is cutting the men's sports that don't make a lot of money or any money at all. So what they do, they cut the wrestling programs, making the dollars even. Instead of figuring out, hey, what should we do, they just cut the wrestling program.
Cowards do that, and that ain't you.
That sucks. So what is a school like University of Iowa doing to combat that? Instead of cutting the program that doesn't have a women's counterpart, they added the women's counterpart.
You're a smart motherfucker, that's right.
Props to them. This is the smart way. We saw this coming for a lot of programs, but the fact that the University of Iowa did it so early on really speeds up this process, and maybe one day we won't have to have this conversation anymore. Now, I know what you're thinking. The title of this video is the real reason behind the University of Iowa adding women's wrestling. I know what you're thinking. You saw some tweets. People were putting out some tweets saying maybe this wasn't because the University of Iowa purely loves women's wrestling. Maybe it's because they're getting sued and they're trying to avoid that lawsuit. Maybe you're thinking that. And I'm going to go ahead and explain why you might be thinking that, or why some people might be thinking that. I'm about to go into that. I'm just going to explain what happened and why it did play a little bit of a factor of what actually happened. Now, back when the pandemic hit, the University of Iowa decided to cut some sports. I believe they cut 3 men's sports and women's swimming and diving. Fact check me on that. Someone let me know if I was totally right on that. But they did cut women's swimming and diving, which is an important part of how the University of Iowa added women's wrestling. They cut swimming and diving, and after they did that, 4 University of Iowa swimmers and divers decided to sue the university. They did some digging and they said, hey, what about Title IX? You guys just forgetting that? Because if you cut us, essentially, you guys aren't spending the same amount of dollars on men's sports as you are women's sports. According to Cody Goodwin at Hawk Central and Intermat, shout out to Cody Goodwin, I'm going to go ahead and read a little insert that he put in his article on Hawk Central. Go check it out. The NCAA defines the Title IX compliance as requiring dollar for dollar spending on scholarships among men and women, and it must be proportional to student population. According to Iowa's fiscal year 2020 report supplied to the NCAA, $6,524,387 was spent on athletic aid for men and $5,860,477 for women. That total includes the 3 men's sports that are now cut out. So what's that mean? It means that the University of Iowa was spending quite a bit more money on their men than the women. Insert this lawsuit here. So those 4 women said, hey, we're going to sue you guys until you reinstate women's swimming and diving. So they did reinstate it, but it wasn't over yet. About a month ago, Abby Lyman and Miranda Vermeer joined the 4 members of the Iowa women's swimming and diving team in their pursuit to sue the university for violations of gender equity and demanded to reinstate women's swimming and diving and add women's rugby and women's wrestling. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking about to give all the credit to these awesome ladies, but that is not totally the case. Now, this was a big catalyst. However, the University of Iowa has been in talks to add women's wrestling for quite some time. In the announcement, in this monumental announcement for adding this women's wrestling program, the athletic director for the University of Iowa, Gary Barta, decided to talk about the lawsuit, where he said that the lawsuit did push them to resume talks of adding women's wrestling, but there were conversations before the pandemic to add women's wrestling. The pandemic hit, ultimately that just devastated the budget. All those talks were paused. But once these 2 girls decided, hey, you know what, we're going to add our names to the list of the 4 girls that are already suing Iowa. Instead of just reinstating women's swimming diving, we want rugby and women's wrestling. So they reinstated that and they said, you know what, we're going to add women's wrestling anyways. If this helps us get out of this lawsuit, or if this helps that lawsuit kind of go away, we're already going to do it anyways. Here you go. Here's your women's wrestling programs. At the end of the day, the reality is that the University of Iowa already had plans to add a women's wrestling program, but this lawsuit, without a doubt, helped fuel that fire. So I guess we can thank Title IX in a way for helping this thing happen. This is going to be huge for the sport of wrestling across the country, getting more people involved in our sport, getting more people excited to get out on the mat and learn the life lessons that you and I have already learned. Shout out to Title IX, I guess. I'm excited. 2023, 2024 can't come soon enough. That's the first season that the women will be out on the mat in black and gold. So hopefully by then, we'll have some big Division I duels coming up. That'll be great. We'd love to see Iowa versus Penn State, Iowa versus Iowa State versus Oklahoma State. You name it. I can't wait. I'll see you there.